I mean, here's what frustrates me, is that you go get the earmarks and then you vote against the bill. Now, I don't know what they call that in other places, but Congressman Paul in Texas, we call that hypocrisy.
Well, I call it being a constitutionalist, because I believe we should earmark or designate every penny.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. Things got hot at certain points during these debates over the weekend, but now it's really hot. In New Hampshire, it's like 47 degrees, which is incredibly great weather for a New Hampshire primary. I mean, it could be 10 below zero. And Ron Paul might not know this about me, but I spent 4 long winters in college, of course, in New Hampshire. I stayed a Connecticut voter, but nevertheless, I feel like I know New Hampshire fairly well just because of all the time I've spent there. And Ron Paul, of course, candidate for the presidency, congressman from Texas, who now is basically neck and neck in a head-to-head poll, the CBS News poll that just was released, with Obama. He joins us now. Congressman, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good to be with you.
It's great to talk to you now, Congressman. That Rick Perry hit on you over the weekend. You earmarks really aren't constitutional, or they're really not something you want. You vote against them, but then you take the money. Any validity to that charge?
Well, it's demagoguery. I mean, there's validity to, the technicality of what he's saying, but it's distorting, what I'm all about. As a member of Congress, if somebody in my district comes and they want to get highway funds back, that was sent up there, it was a routine. I just would send in the request, and that's what most congressmen always have done. But this whole issue of earmarks is so distorted, because what happens is, if you don't vote for a particular earmark, if you don't support the system, that money goes into the executive branch, and then the president gets to spend that money. And I think that's wrong, but it's perfectly right to defend the principle, at the same time never support the spending. I've never voted for the funding of any earmarks, because I vote against all the appropriation bills. But the definition of earmarks are quite different. Let's say you have a manufacturing plant in your district that does weapon systems for the military. They'll fight tooth and nail for that, but that's not called an earmark. So I think it's a gross distortion. I think the conservatives are mixed up on it, and for somebody to say it's hypocrisy, I think is just a little bit over the top.
And right now in New Hampshire, you are polling at in second, third place. Huntsman, you, Santorum are somewhat bunched up in there. What do you expect to see tonight with the final results?
Well, the last I heard, we were bunched up with Romney and me. That I had a pretty strong second place. So, but it remains to be seen. Things change at the end. Romney has actually slipped a little bit. He was always closer to 20 points ahead of everybody. And last time I saw it, he was 13 ahead of my position. But we'll have to wait to see this evening. Most people are predicting that we're going to have a strong second finish.
Yeah, you're 18 points, just so people understand. In the New Hampshire tracking poll, Suffolk, again, you're at 18 points. Romney's at 37. Huntsman's down at 16. And in WMUR, you're at 17. Huntsman's down at 11. So you have a fairly solid second place there as well. Let's talk about what's happened here on the campaign trail. The substance and the issues, I think we dug into a lot the last time you were on the show, Congressman. But now the framing of this debate, the choice among all of you candidates, in part has centered on Mitt Romney and his experience and his record at Bain Capital. Do you think this is a legitimate line of criticism for other conservative or other Republican candidates in this race?
No, I think it's a big distraction, and they're picking up on this. And those who are condemning him for it, I think, are arguing like Democrats. They come in and say, restructuring in the free market is a good idea. And I don't know anything about Bain, so I'm not even taking a position that I haven't looked at it, and I have no idea what he did or didn't do. But the principle of restructuring is a good thing in the marketplace, because if a company's in trouble and they're about to close their doors, restructuring is the only thing that saves the company. So yes, in the short run, there are some cuts that have to be done, and yet on the long run, it's a savings. So for conservatives to come through and say restructuring is bad, I think there's a big difference if you're restructuring in the free market and you're doing a positive thing versus somebody who might have taken money from Freddie Mac and the government's involved and General Motors gets bailed out and the banks get bailed out, or you get contracts from the government, that is an entirely different story. And I think this argument that's going on now over Bain, I think it's really a distraction from the issues.
Does it surprise you that Newt Gingrich is making this argument?
Not really. You know, I mean, he's sort of struggling and he's looking for something, and but I don't think it's going to sell because I'm hoping that people understand the marketplace a little bit better than that.
A lot of our listeners have called in. They want to ask questions, and they wanted to ask questions last time you were on, and I was such a bad host back then, Congressman. I didn't get to them. So Mark in Amarillo, Texas, on line 4, your state. Mark, go ahead.
Dr. Paul, I very seldom say this but to a politician, but it's a real honor to speak to you. I have two questions, actually. One about the Federal Reserve. Could you get rid of the Federal Reserve as president, or would it take some kind of a constitutional amendment, or just an act of Congress? The other question I have is, let's say, I know your position in defense, but as far as
Laura, I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, okay. All right. There's something, we have an audio issue. I'll just tell you what he said, Congressman. Sorry about that. He basically said to eliminate the Federal Reserve, would it take an act of Congress, a constitutional amendment? How would you actually accomplish that as the President of the United States?
Well, you could challenge this in a court because it is unconstitutional, but that's not very practical. And also, the easiest way would be for Congress to change or repeal the Federal Reserve Act because the Congress created it, although they didn't have the authority to do this. But as important as that subject is to me, my position isn't to close down the Fed in one day or 1 week or so because, you know, we're very much engaged with that financial system. As bad as it is, that wouldn't be the solution. So my answer to it is to give the Federal Reserve competition and legalize sound money, legalize gold and silver coins, as the Constitution says, get rid of the illegal tender laws, as well as getting taxes off money. You know, if you want to use silver dollars for money, which we used to, you go to prison, or you have to pay taxes on it, too. You have to pay sales taxes and capital gains taxes. So I'd like to see competition, because this financial crisis is going to get much worse. And eventually, since all the currencies are tied together, there's going to be a rush out of all the paper currencies. And there's no place to go in currencies because they're all fiat and they're all based on the dollar reserve standard. So when that happens, people are going to be looking for real value. I think I just heard an ad where diamond prices went up sharply. One of the best things. That's a hard asset. It's not money, but it's a hard asset. But that isn't that all of a sudden there's a shortage of diamonds. It's because people do buy diamonds because and paintings, different things like these. These are hard assets. That's a reflection of the devaluation of the currency. That's what people have to get prepared for.
Yeah, well, people are freaking, right? They're not getting any money in the banks on interest, and they're deathly afraid of the stock market. Well, how do you invest, by the way? I'm curious about how Ron Paul, with your vision of the economy, how do you invest?
You know, it's a shame that you have no, privacy in public office, but I understand the reason. But
I'm just curious. I'm not trying to gotcha. I'm not trying to gotcha at moment here. I'm just curious. I'm interested in your thinking.
But I will tell you, but there's a lot of articles written because it's all public record. We have to send it in. I invest in hard assets. I like property. I think even though houses go up and down, I think right now, rental houses aren't a bad idea. I have a couple of those, and we have some land, and I do invest in hard assets. Gold, silver.
Gold, silver. Now, apparently, maybe diamonds now, but with Ron Paul. Congressman, is Rand Paul your most effective surrogate out there? Your son?
I'd have trouble finding a better spokesman for me because he does get a lot of attention. He handles himself very well, and everybody knows he's a much better speaker than I am, so he does very well.
All right, we have the sweater vest surge from Rick Santorum, and I'm thinking the suit jacket of Ron Paul could actually be your new emblem because you have a suit, and it's a little bit Well, it's a little big on the shoulders. Have you noticed that, Congressman? Just a slightly big on your shoulders, and I think it's, well, my staff thinks it's cute. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. I'm glad somebody likes it.
I just like the fact that it's clearly you're not running out to Brioni's to get your suits fitted. I think that's actually a positive thing for most people. Let's move on to what's happening in the foreign policy world. Right now, we have a rise of Islamism in the Middle East. The Muslim Brotherhood set for big election gains. Obviously, we've seen in Egypt. What would you do as president with the Muslim Brotherhood?
A lot less, a lot sooner, because it's our policy that causes these incentives. I mean, here we propped up Mubarak for how many years? 30 or 40 years, gave him $40 billion, and finally the people turn against him, and then we figure he's going to go, so we support the dissidents, and they come in, and what? Well, you know, they're radicals, and they're going to be Al-Qaeda involved. So I think this is a perfect example of the unintended consequences of us being engaged and inciting people and radicalizing them against foreign intervention and propping up of dictators that they don't like. And we've done this many, many times. I mean, in the Mediterranean, in the Far East, we've been in the Middle East, we have propped up these governments, and people resent this, and we end up with worse governments to deal with. But just think of all that fighting we did in Iraq, and all the deaths and the costs that were involved. And yeah, Iraq now is a Shiite nation, and they're going to be moved much closer to Iran. And the Iranians are now allowing China to come in and invest in their natural resources.
And just so I'm clear, you don't think Iran, Congressman, Iran represents a real existential threat to the United States? I'm not talking imminent, but a threat over some period of time in near future, let's say 10, 15 years. Do you see any concern on our part for what's happening in that region of the world?
Yeah, I think is you have to keep eyes on it, and let's hope they don't get a nuclear weapon. And they aren't they're not on the verge of getting one, according to our CIA and according to the UN inspectors. But if you want to worry about the existential threat, I mean, just ask the current as well as the former head of the Mossad in Israel. They said that they are not an existential threat, even if they get a nuclear weapon. And they were urging caution, and the war would be worse for Israel right now, going in and starting a war when they don't even know where they're going to go or what they're going to do. But if they start bombing sites, and even the sanctions have already disrupted the oil supplies. Just the threat of them. So
what about the
Israelis? They actually have a real debate over there. I think we lack the debate here in the United States, and they're not as open.
Have you seen? Congressman, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're almost out of time. Have you seen the plight of the former Marine who's now on death row in Iran? What would your approach to that be to try to get him out of there?
Well, we should use maximum diplomatic efforts to do this. It's sort of shame we have to go through another country and we can't, talk to them directly. But it makes it harder, but we should do everything conceivable. I think they're doing a lot of grandstanding. I'm just wondering whether when they had those 3 students, they released the girl, and that sounded humanitarian, and then they released the next 2, even though they had sentenced them, and then they come out sort of looking good. I think what they'll probably do is have this sentence, and my guess is he'll probably be released. But I guess since we don't deal with them directly, I guess we have to deal with them indirectly and put the maximum diplomatic pressure on them that we can.
And what happened with CNN? I saw some dust up with you and Dana Bash. What was that all about yesterday?
Oh, I don't know. It's sort of a long story.
Short version.
We were having this interview, but my staff person thought that she was over the top, concocting something, distorting the views. He got a little annoyed, and he's gotten a lot of compliments from it. I'm sort of neutral on whether those are good tactics or not.
Yeah,
but she was a little bit over the top because somebody was complaining, and I think she was a plant. And she went to the media and said, "I've been a Ron Paul supporter, and now I hate his guts." So she wanted to, just promote the propaganda of what other campaigns do. So it's part of the dirty
the game.
Things. And he just had it, and got upset with him.
And how much sleep you getting a night?
I'm doing pretty good. That's one thing that I know how to do. I've learned how to do that. Delivering babies over the years, I can lie down and go to sleep in 5 minutes.
Oh, good. Well, Congressman Ron Paul, we appreciate your joining us, the perspective on this, and we'll be watching what happens in New Hampshire and on the way to South Carolina. Thanks so much.
Very good. Thank you.